Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. It's your friend James Shaw. Trust you're doing okay and excited to chat with you today. I stumbled across this guy, and he is like my new best friend, doesn't even know it. His stuff on Instagram and Twitter is like legitimately life changing and absolutely in alignment with what we talk about in here. And that is, it's not get up and go hard every day. It's life is about much more than that. And we're going to talk a little bit about it today. And I'm excited to welcome Brad Stulberg. He wrote The Practice of Groundedness is your latest book that's out. And dude, this book it's life changing. I don't know what else to call it. It gives the perspective that people need right now. So thanks for joining us. Would you introduce yourself to the group?
Hey, James. First off, I'm really honored to be here and to be speaking with you and by proxy with your community that you've built. And I'm just so appreciative of the kind words about my work and about the book. So I'm Brad. I wear two predominant hats. One hat is a researcher and a writer, and then the other is a coach where I work with entrepreneurs, executives, founders, other business professionals on their mental skills and performance.
And it's needed right now on the planet, and especially in the real estate industry. This our industry is one that, I mean, we got people that work from 4 a.m. to midnight, go sleep a few hours, get back at it again, constantly getting text on their phone. It's push, push, push. We're in an industry that rewards who takes the most listings, who has the most sales in a month, and it's easy to get out of sorts. This is a common thing, by the way, for high achievers, right, Brad?
It's extremely common. And, we were talking the other day offline, James. I think that realtors, it's almost like the perfect storm because you're in a world where the objectives are really clear. So, like you mentioned, listings, deals done, commissions, and those performance metrics, they have an addictive quality where you just chase more and more and more. And I think the trade off that everyone needs to be aware of in any pursuit, but particularly perhaps in real estate, is that sometimes burning really, really bright in the short term comes at the expense of burning over the long term. So anyone can crush themselves and just destroy work for a week, a month, maybe even a year or two. But to have a long, sustained career of excellence for a decade, for multiple decades, you've got to find a different way to work because it's just not sustainable to do that, 4 hours of sleep, rinse and repeat, either physically or emotionally or both. You're going to burn out. Now, what's challenging is, we're not singing kumbaya, everything's going to be all right. There's a real trade-off. And often what it means is getting over that addiction to short-term, go, 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 make the deal today in favor of playing the long game and reframing the goal as how can I be the most excellent? How can I be the best at getting better? How can I be the best realtor over the course of my career? And what does that path look like?
Yeah, it's a great thing. And so ultimately it comes down to, I think, a couple of things. One is understanding the importance of consistency, so doing the right things more days than you don't, and making a long play for that. Can you talk a little bit about the consistency? And then I want you to define, but then what does it mean to be consistent and a high achiever and a high performer and yet also be grounded? So I want to go into that too, but walk through the importance of measuring it over the long term instead of the right now.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought it up. I don't know if people can see. I'll hold it up. So it's literally on my hat here. Consistency over intensity. It's a coined phrase that I really try to live by. And here's the common trap. We think that we need to absolutely crush it and go to the well and be super intense every day. But regardless of the domain, whether it's intellectual research, whether it's sales, or whether it's physical performance in the gym, what ends up happening is if we try to maximize for intensity, we never get into a rhythm. Again, we get injured, we get burnt out, we lose motivation, we have these stops and starts. So intensity looks really good when you zoom in day to day, but when you zoom out, the intensity cycle, it doesn't really go up and to the right. It's more like this. Whereas consistency, as you mentioned or you alluded to, it's about defining what is the sustainable level of effort that I can put in. What's my process in showing up and putting in that level of effort day in and day out over the long haul? And where intensity tends to burn really bright and then lead to burnout, consistency is the opposite. When you're consistent, you take these small, regular steps that over time compound for big gains. Now, I want to be careful here, right? I've worked with Olympians. There is a time and a place to go to the well. And I'm not a realtor, so I don't know, but my guess is y'all can immediately think there's probably a parallel in your craft. Maybe it's a certain season, maybe it's a certain phase in your career where it makes sense to focus on intensity. But that's got to be the exception, not the rule. So the way that I like to think about performance is you lay this solid foundation of consistent, sustainable effort. That's what gets you going over time. That's what makes progress over time. And then it's punctuated by blasts of intensity at the right place, at the right time, and constrained for a period of time. And you look across the elite performance literature in any discipline, again, from the arts to intellect to sales to athletics, what it shows is the best performers that do it over the long haul, they have a foundation of consistency, and then they have periods, defined periods, where then they switch to intensity.
I mean, this is language we hear all the time. I know you know this book, The One Thing, and
Yep.
that's Gary Keller is the Keller of Keller Williams, right, along with Jay Papasan, and they talk about it too, about having some sort of there are times we're going to live life at the extremes, is what they'll talk about, and yet we want to be kind of in a flow. When I hear you talk about this, I think of things that we see a lot in our industry. I'll see people all the time; they're doing 75 hard. And and I'm not saying good or bad things about any particular thing, but to me it seems like maybe getting on a regular diet plan, just eating the right things more days than you don't, and exercising more days than you don't, being consistent in that might be better than going all in for 75 days and then kind of a reward at the end. What are your thoughts around that?
Simple, not easy. That tends to be what works in most domains, is you nail the basics over and over again. And I think one reason that people complexify things or they really go big is because in the short term, it feels really good. Like when you commit to a crazy diet plan, you feel great. You're motivated. And physiologically, you probably start to feel pretty good after 30, 45 days. But then your kid's homesick from school, or you're super stressed out and you're driving by the Burger King. And now you're judging yourself. Well, I shouldn't do that. I can't do that. And very rarely are like super rigid plans sustainable. Now, this isn't about saying like, to hell with it, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Again, it's about developing a consistent foundation for the practices, for the behaviors, for the habits that matter most. And then within that foundation, I sound like a broken record, but I'm repeating it because it's so important. Then you punctuate it with these periods of intensity in all in. So, you can think consistency over intensity. You'll hear me talk about a lot. And then also simple doesn't mean easy. So I think far too often people look at the star athletes and they just assume they're doing this mysterious secret or this complex hack, when in fact, what they're really good at is showing up day in and day out.
Routine, getting into routine. We had Justin Sua on here. I know you're familiar with him. We had Justin Sua on, over a year ago. He's the mental performance coach for the Tampa Bay Rays. You want to talk about people that are into routine? Major League Baseball players are into routine, and when routine gets messed up, they can get messed up, and his job is to help keep them moving in the right direction. So picking routine matters. Now, I said I want you to define what groundedness means, because again, we are in this business. It's go, 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 and like you said, there are times you might have to go. In our world, it would be if you're at the middle of the month and you're not halfway to goal, then yeah, you're probably going to turn it up a little bit to get back on track so you can finish the hit your standard and hit your goal for the month. And yet we want consistency. But what does it mean to be grounded?
So I'm going to use the metaphor of a mountain, and it works on two different levels. So the first level is you want to get to the peak of the mountain. And in your industry, let's say that the peak of mountain is X amount of deals or X amount of listings, right? That's what you're climbing towards. And there are two different climbers that both want to get to that peak equally as bad. One climber is just obsessed with getting there. They think their self-worth will be validated when they get there. They think that when they get there, they'll finally feel happy. They'll finally feel content. And they can't wait to get the plaque that says that they got to the peak of the mountain and take selfies up there and show all their friends. The other climber, equally as bad, wants to get to the top of the mountain, but they have embraced the process. So rather than spending so much time ruminating or wishing or dreaming about the peak, they've committed to being where their feet are day in and day out. And they're actually enjoying the climb. They're doing it with people that they like. At night, they're taking time to look at the sunset. In the morning, the sunrise. Now, both climbers are going for the same peak. What the research shows, both in actual climbing and then metaphorically in other industries, is that for any one mountain, these two climbers have the same chance of getting to the top. But then when you zoom out and you look longitudinally over which climber has a better chance of sustaining performance, it's always the second one. So being grounded isn't about not striving for goals, but it's about being firmly situated in the process, in the striving itself, finding joy, finding meaning in the striving more so than the achievement. Because we know, and my guess is if you're a type A, high driven pusher, excellent realtor, you know that we tend to think, we tell ourselves this story. If my book just hits the bestseller list, if I just win a medal, if I just close that $10 million home, then I'll be happy. I'll be able to sit down in my comfy leather chair with my tea or my bourbon and just finally be content. And you know what happens? You do that for about a day and then you're on to the next goal. So humans weren't wired to be content. We were wired to strive. And I think that groundedness is about one, accepting that, but then two, finding joy in the process. So releasing from results just enough that you can be firmly situated in the process of striving. So I said there's two levels. That's the first. The second level is in our own foundational habits, our own health, our own performance practices. It's also a lot like a mountain. So people, they tend to look at the bright and shiny objects. They tend to look at the peak. But what keeps a mountain really strong through rough weather, it's not the peak, it's the foundation, it's the base. It's the stuff that no one pays attention to. And without that solid foundation, when storms come, the mountain crumbles. And we're the same way. It's very easy to get caught up in fads and quick fixes and all these bright and shiny objects, these metaphorical peaks, instead of focusing on the deep foundation. So groundedness, it's about focusing on that foundation, being firmly grounded, and equally as important, once you strive for a goal, it's about constantly coming back to the process and being present in the striving itself. This isn't to say you need to be a Zen monk and completely forget about achievement. It's not what I'm saying at all. I'm simply saying that the majority of your motivation most of the time should be driven by the meaning, the excitement, the joy that you get from the process. Are there times when you're going to be pulled by a big goal? Absolutely. But then it's just about coming back to the work itself and saying, hey, I like the thrill of deal making. I like working with people. I like building my community. These are the things. As long as these things make up more than 50, 51, 52% of your motivation, you'll tend to be pretty healthy.
That's so good. It's fall in love with the process, which you talk about a lot. Build a solid foundation, which you talk about a lot. You can have the appearance of strength at great times, but if the foundation isn't strong, it'll crumble. We say a lot, that success comes to those who are obsessed with consistency. So really being all in on what are the metrics that you're going to measure daily. For us, it's going to be how many people am I talking to? What's
Yep.
the standard?
And you can't control, to your point, James, you cannot control how those people are going to respond. So all you can do is have a good process, show up and execute on it, and then reflect, whether it's monthly, quarterly, annually, and then shift your process when needed. Because the truth is, you could call someone, a potential client, and you could have the exact same phone call. In day one, they had a great morning. They realized that their kid had a high GPA on their report card. You're going to close that deal. Day two, they got into a fight with their significant other the last night. You're not going to close that deal. Right. Nothing to do with what you're doing, right? You cannot control that. And if you put your self-worth in that, your path is going to look like this crazy emotional roller coaster, where if you judge yourself based on how consistent you are in the process, you will feel so much better. And again, this isn't just me. This is decades of research. Over the long haul, you'll perform better too.
It's really smart. Yeah, like you said, look, we can't necessarily schedule an appointment on any individual call, but any individual call can lead to one. And as long as we make enough of those, knock on enough doors, stay in touch with our database the right way, and we know what that kind of number needs to be daily, and we set that standard, then we'll win. Brad, you're great. Here's the thing. So you're joining us for our Inspire group. That's the mastermind community that's kind of born out of Pivot Shift Ahead. So our Inspire Collective members get to meet with you March 7th, which is going to be amazing. We get to spend an hour with you on March 7th, which we're so excited about. And then, of course, you'll be at our in-person event called Elevate in April to go even deeper. Those of you who aren't members of Inspire, you can join it if you want. JamesDshaw.com is where you can join Inspire and get to spend an hour with Brad on March 7th, which will be awesome. But Brad, how can people just find you? What's the best way to connect with you through social media or whatever?
So the place that I am most often these days is on Instagram, on social media, where my handle is at Brad Stulberg. And then, as you mentioned, I'm also on Twitter, where I'm at B Stulberg. And, a plug for what you're doing, James, is I just love how you really take this industry and this profession and you make it into a craft where people can pursue excellence. And as y'all will read, if you read my book, The Practice of Groundedness, all this stuff becomes so much more sustainable when it's done in a community. So kudos to you for building this community of practice, James.
Thank you. Yeah, your book, I flipped out when I opened. It was early. It's early on in the book. It's one of the early pages that talks about the importance of having deep community. And I said, this guy is for us, no doubt about it. So the book is The Practice of Groundedness. If you're coming to Elevate in April, we've already bought your copy. They're in my garage, Brad. They're ready to go. So thanks for joining us today on here. We'll look forward to seeing you on the Inspire call as well. And we'll follow you on socials. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate you.
Thank you, James. Look forward to meeting more of y'all in March or in person in April. Take care.
And everybody else, we'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.